They were unveiled one summer night in Boston. The All-Century Players. A collection of the best baseball talent the sport has ever known. The game's living legends, honored in an unforgettable on-field ceremony. Fenway Park, transformed into a virtual field of dreams. Inspiring memories of those who could be there only in spirit. Mythic figures like Ruth, Robinson, and DiMaggio, making the surreal believable, bringing generations of heroes together. One place, one time. It's a team 100 years in the making, the most exclusive club in the history of sports. Baseball fantasy? Perhaps, but what a team. What a remarkable team. Major League Baseball Productions presents the All-Century Team. We begin with the first baseman, led by the Iron Horse.
At the end of the century, people of my generation seem to know two things about Lou Gehrig. Long streak, died young. Those two things have overshadowed and obscured exactly how prominent and how great a player Gehrig was.
A phenomenal hitter, a two-time most valuable player. Lou played in Babe Ruth's shadow for 12 straight years. For the most part, though, he was just fine with that.
People think that he was grumbling because Ruth was stealing his thunder, but Gehrig liked it like that. He liked being out of the limelight. He was delighted that Ruth could take the press concentration away from him.
Lou Gehrig batting.
Gehrig was a better hitter in my estimation than Ruth because he was a harder man to fool.
Be sure to keep the arm straight from the body, back, and ready to hit.
Lou's thunderous bat did, however, belie the quiet gentleman who swung it.
I call him a live and let live man. No violence about him. Even when he got knocked down, he took it. Lou treated it like sooner or later you'll have to throw the ball over the plate. And when you do, I'll cream you. That's the type of guy he was.
The fans just loved the guy, and they gave him a hand all the time. Gave him a big hand every time he come to the plate. They just liked everything he did, every move he made.
Lou played in 2,130 straight games, earning the nickname the Iron Horse. Then his career was cut short by an incurable disease.
You can't imagine that something like that would happen to a big, strong man like him.
And of course, Lou's farewell to baseball brought forth one of the game's most memorable lines.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Casey at the bat. If you have in your mind who Casey may be, it would be Mark McGwire with those huge forearms and those bulging muscles.
His arms are as big as my legs. And this guy is really a mammoth guy.
Well, I think we have an infatuation of big in our country, and the biggest thing is the home run in the game of baseball, and the biggest player is Mark.
He's such a mechanically sound hitter. He's quiet when he gets locked back there. He's just focused. When the ball's in the zone, he just goes down. You see his legs flex a little bit, and he transfers his weight.
The 16th player in Major League history to hit 500 home runs. On the
Swing and a long home run for Big Mac. It hit better than halfway up on the scoreboard in right center.
We all love the big, powerful home run hitters, and in the modern game, Mark McGwire is that stereotype. He's a huge, strong, big guy that hits towering, long home runs.
Still, it wasn't until 1998 that Mark McGwire achieved Ruthian status.
You said it was unbelievable to be in the same sentence as Babe Ruth, but for our generation, you are Babe Ruth.
Well, thank you.
down the left field line. Is it enough? Gone! That is 62!
He hit 7 home runs. I don't care where you're playing. That's just a tremendous feat. It's just, you're playing a little league ball, hit 7 home runs. That's a lot of home runs.
Now the second baseman, starting with the man who broke baseball's color barrier. Jackie Robinson is, no doubt, the most influential member of the All-Century team.
I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for him. His impact on the game was bigger than just a game. I mean, he had an impact on America.
When I got there, I said, you know, the one thing that I can do as a black player is to continue the fight that Jackie started.
He changed the way we thought, he changed the way we lived, and don't forget, he entertained us as a baseball player.
Jackie was more than a pioneer. He was also a dynamic presence on the field.
If Jackie Robinson would have come to the big leagues at the age of 20, 21, 22, like most of us did at that time, I mean, he'd have probably broke every second base record or wherever he played.
He was just one fantastic all-around athlete. Baseball was his worst sport.
He took Negro League baseball to the Major League. He took that excitement, bunt the ball, first base, steal second, steal third, steal home. With Jackie, you can't leave the ball game because he might do something you've never seen before.
The fiery passion that burned inside Jackie Robinson was never more apparent than when he was on the base paths.
Jackie Robinson was one of the greatest competitors I've ever seen. He wanted to beat you so bad. He can beat you with his arms, his back, and beat you with his legs.
The fact that my father has been selected, not just because he was an extraordinarily talented athlete, but also because he had strong character and made a contribution that goes beyond just the playing field, makes him a special member of the team.
Rogers Hornsby is considered to be the greatest right-handed hitter of all time.
Hornsby's .358 batting average is the highest batting average by any right-handed batter in the history of the game.
As we come to the end of the century, no one will have hit for a 400 batting average for the last 58 years. Picture somebody doing that once and then being consistent enough to do it over a 5-year period.
So what was it that made Hornsby so prolific at the plate?
Great eyes. The same thing with Ted Williams. Great eyes.
And in those eyes, an intensity for the game. They say he never left his home in the winter, waiting for the spring, when he'd once again re-emerge and amaze.
If I asked you who had the highest slugging average in National League history, if you had a guess, you might say Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial, but it was none of them. It was Rogers Hornsby. He slugged .577, and he did that as a middle infielder, which is all the more amazing.
Hornsby achieved one of baseball's greatest combinations of average and power.
He had, when he retired, the second most home runs in baseball, second only to Babe Ruth. This was at a time when people joined the 200 home run club, not the 500 home run club.
The man they called the Raja was a two-time MVP. Handsome and heroic, he stood above almost everyone.
If not for Babe Ruth, you'd look back at the 1920s and say that was the age of Hornsby. Just a remarkable player. Hard to imagine any second baseman that would be better than Rogers Hornsby.
Now we continue our swing around the horn with three superstar shortstops.
Said that number 8, Cal Ripken Jr. has reached the unreachable star.
And then I sat there in front of that TV and bawled like a baby while he was breaking that record and going around and taking a trip and shaking hands with the people in the stands.
That's one record I really believe will not be broken. But this guy loved to play. He had great desire, great work ethic.
It's tough to play every single game. And at shortstop, what Cal Ripken has done without missing a game, I don't know if people understand how amazing that really is.
There's no sick days, there's no nothing, and he didn't get a day off. Even if something's hurting, you get a sprained ankle, there's little things that happen just when you're playing hard day in and day out. And not only that, you got to be good.
You get a shortstop that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. What an asset it is.
Prodigious blast way out there beyond the bullpen of the Orioles.
Cal Ripken was a big idol of mine growing up because he was a big shortstop. I think he paved the way for the taller shortstops of today.
Diving stop by Cal from his knees. Got it!
For me, offense and defense, Cal Ripken was probably the best that I played against.
Cal was just a great shortstop. Very knowledgeable on playing the hitters, a very sure-handed, very, very accurate arm. There wasn't anything about the game that he didn't study to the nth degree.
Yet this most celebrated ball player prefers to be remembered as a blue-collar worker, one who just did his job every day.
There are a lot of great things about being a baseball player, but it doesn't change who you are. And I think that's one of the highest compliments you can pay someone, is if you say he's just a regular guy.
My kind of town, Chicago is. The Wrigleyville in Chicago is. My kind of town that won't let you down.
One thing I remember about Ernie, loved baseball, loved to play. He wanted to play too every day.
Ernie Banks always made you smile. And behind the warmth of the man they called Mr. Cub was a passion for the game he loved to play.
When I think of shortstop, I think of a great band leader like Louis Armstrong.
And Ernie conducted a clinic at short, the first real power hitter to play this prime position.
I saw great ability. He had soft hands. He got to the ball and seemed like every time he threw to first base, and it was often said, he just gets you.
Ernie was a presence in the field, but even more dangerous at the plate.
I don't know that anybody hit the ball like Ernie did. He had great wrist, and if you threw him anything low, you know, he could hit it out of the ballpark.
That's a fly ball, deep to left, back, that's it! Hey!
I saw it go out of the ballpark, and I said, wow, this can't be me.
Ernie Banks got number 500!
Sunshine, fresh air. We got the team behind us. So let's play two.
Hans Wagner, the grand old man of baseball, out of the game 16 years, is a Pirate coach.
I think there's a little difference in baseball now between when I started out and what she is now. Pitchers got harder work. In other words, they ain't allowed to use the spitball, the emery, and the mud ball, and the shine ball.
But even those pitching tricks couldn't stop Hannes Wagner from becoming the first dominant player of the 20th century.
I would say Wagner is the greatest shortstop of all time. He was recognized as a magnificent fielder, base runner, and batter during his day. And to this day, is still widely regarded as the best shortstop in the game and clearly one of the finest players to have ever played the game.
It is remarkable and it's astounding because we're talking about years when the league batting average might have been 245, 248. People who saw him 20, 30, 40 years later would say he was the best player of all time, better than Ruth, better than Cobb.
And when he finally faced Ty Cobb in the 1909 World Series, it was no contest.
Wagner outplayed Cobb in almost every respect. Wagner was a hero. He was one of the reasons that the Pirates won the World Series.
As we come to the end of the century and we just know him as a name or a line of numbers in a book, sometimes we have to defer to the judgment of the people who actually saw him play. John McGraw said he was the greatest player he ever saw. And when they had the first Hall of Fame election in 1936, a lot of the voters in that election had seen Wagner play. And it's interesting that in that first Hall of Fame election, Wagner and Babe Ruth got exactly the same number of votes. That's a pretty strong statement.
Now it's on to the greatest third baseman of the century. Mike Schmidt was a player for the ages. A lethal bat, a terrific glove. Third base was Schmidt's domain. He led the National League in home runs a record 8 times and won 3 MVP awards.
It is out of here, Michael Jack Schmidt.
He had that sort of swagger, that confidence.
There are certain guys on a team that you could say, this guy could actually carry this ball club. If this guy got hot, he carried the team.
3-1 pitch. Schmidt. Long drive, fair ball. It is home run, Mike Schmidt. Oh, brother.
One of the things that I'm most proud of in a career that spanned 17 years, I had 15 years that were league leader type years. The combination of big-time home run hitter and great fielder is, it's hard to find.
Right back and off the glove, and he will not. Mike Schmidt, what a play to get him! Whoa, look at this!
As you're approaching 500 home runs, there's something about that number. There's a lot of focus, and it does put you in an elite group in terms of players.
And he takes a shot at it. There it goes. It is out of here. Michael Jack Schmidt with number 500, and the whole team comes out to greet Schmitty.
I've seen him enough to know this. They're never going to tell me there's somebody better. If they do, somebody's lying to me.
Baltimore embraced 1964 MVP Brooks Robinson for his artistry at third base, his down-home demeanor, and his desire to succeed.
I really and truly believe everything I accomplished, now that was not all on ability. I just think my love for the game probably overrode everything else and the passion to play.
I got to see firsthand how good a player Brooksy was. The ultimate, defensively unparalleled. He had great reflexes, he had tremendous quickness, great hand-eye coordination, had a terrific glove.
They didn't get by him over there. And I think he was the one that
I think the Orioles decided to model their squads after.
The first thing you think about is he did take runs away from your team, but I remember him also as a tremendous hitter and especially a tremendous clutch hitter.
Left field, Carbo going back, warning track, looks up, over. Brooks Robinson has given the Orioles the lead with a home run.
I played almost 23 years professionally, and I don't think I ever had 5 games in a row like I had in that World Series. It just happened to be the World Series.
Would you believe that? Well, this guy's in another world. That's a... Oh! Robinson does it again! Brooks Robinson making another phenomenal play at third.
You know, when people think of Brooks Robinson, they think of defense more than anything else, and there's no doubt in my mind that 70 series really acted as a springboard for my entering the Hall of Fame.
He thrilled me day after day after day, and I just loved playing with him. Not only was he a great third baseman, he's a great friend and just a wonderful person.
Next, the all-century pitchers. We begin with the Express.
The personification of a power pitcher. Every time you faced him, you know what's coming. You hear it coming.
To know that when you were facing Nolan Ryan, it was a little prayer. Dear God, don't let me get hurt.
To me, that mound's your mound and that's your territory, and you want the hitter to know that you look at it that way, and it's the hitter against the pitcher. You don't want to ever give them the thought that you're not confident in what you're doing, and for me to be successful, I had to be aggressive.
He struck him out swinging. Strikeout number 5,000 is history for Nolan Ryan.
You know, with Nolan, he was over 40 when the Rangers got him. You know, people said he was on a pitch limit and be careful of him and he's going to blow out someday. And he warmed up one game and came in a dugout and came over to me with a pale look and said, you know, this might be the end. And Nolan went over and was wiping his face before he went out on the field. And he said, have somebody ready quick. And you know, I had a real bad feeling in my stomach thinking that I was going to have to be there when he walked off the mound for the last time, and I always worried about that. He threw no-hitter that day.
That's it! Number 7 is in the books. The remarkable Ryan has done it again.
Once he smelled a victory from the 7th inning on, the game's over. You know, you're not going to beat him.
No-hitter number 5. 6 for Nolan Ryan. The Express has done it once again.
When you think about all the great players that played in this century, to be put in that category is very special, and there's a lot of those hitters I would have loved the opportunity to face because I think it would have been a real challenge.
Sandy for a 5-year period was unhittable.
The day I wasn't pitching, I used to sit down just to watch him. His fastball and his breaking ball, his overhand curve, he was the master.
There were a lot of times you knew what was coming and you still couldn't hit it.
Koufax was so good, he stumped the game's best hitters, even when they knew what was coming.
I knew. He would tell you. He said, here it come. And the ball would get there and go up. It wouldn't go, it didn't do anything but just go up. I couldn't hit it. It start here, go up.
He threw what I call radio balls. You could hear him, but you couldn't see him. It was definitely an audio experience. You just hear the zzz.
The curveball up here, which is normally a ball, is now a strike from him. Because you don't see it every day, you just can't react to it.
And you almost felt like he could pitch in a no-hit game any day he walked out there. Some pitchers go out there, they don't have their good stuff. Well, I never saw a day that Koufax didn't have good stuff.
And his 4th no-hitter was perfect.
1 strike away. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed a perfect game.
Koufax reached still another level in the World Series, where in 8 starts, his ERA was incredibly below 1.
You've had 4 no-hitters, a perfect game, have a World Series record of 15 in one game. Where does this one fit in as far as thrills are concerned?
I don't know, Vinny. This has got to be as high as any of them. This whole year is a thrill.
In his final season, he won 27 games, making it 129 in a magical 6-year run.
In those 6 or 7 years, he was something beautiful to watch.
He was the pitcher of that decade, maybe any decade, really.
Cy Young pitched from 1890 to 1911, and he pitched like no man since.
The number of games and innings pitched, number of wins, his numbers are just mind-boggling.
Denton True Young was named Cy, short for Cyclone, due to his windup. That cyclone wreaked havoc on the record books.
The classic example is if you win 20 games for 20 years, you'll be 111 wins short of Young's record.
511 wins is just, it's amazing.
At the time he was pitching, a pitcher was expected to pitch a complete game virtually every day and to make a couple of relief appearances in between in cases when lesser pitchers were unable to complete their games.
Cy Young pitched in an era when guys were getting only 3 days rest to pitch, and so you'll see a lot of innings, a lot of starts. The 511 wins will never be duplicated because people now pitch on every 5th day. He pitched about 90 percentage points better than the teams he played on, so he's a great, great pitcher.
So great, his name is on the mind of every pitcher in baseball when they take the mound each spring. Their goal, after all, is to be the best that season, to be the winner of the Cy Young Award.
Bob Gibson probably was the best competitor I've ever played against. He gave no quarter, did not like talking to the opposing team.
Gibson wouldn't say a word. I go over to him, "Hi Bob, how you doing?" "I don't know. I'll let you know tomorrow." And you knew that tomorrow I didn't want to play.
There was not much of a smile ever on the man's face. He went out to do his job.
The pitch coming, a swing and a miss. He struck him out. And that's 3,000 for Bob Gibson.
When you look at Gibson's career, he led the National League in walks, for instance, in 1962. Only 6 years later, he had a 1.12 ERA and could throw a fastball or a slider on any count in an area about twice the width of a baseball on the outside part of the plate, just above the knees.
The first time I faced him, he struck me out on a slider that I don't think God could have hit. I mean, this thing just disappeared on me.
Bob, he didn't never make too many mistakes. He'd give you a pitch to hit maybe once and then pull a bat. And if you miss that, you don't want to get anything else.
In 1968, Bob Gibson threw 13 shutouts, part of a season that ranks among the greatest any pitcher has ever had.
68 just happens to be the year that everything came together. And yeah, I was in a zone. I was probably as strong as I'd ever been in my life, and I knew how to pitch by that time.
A new World Series record of 17 strikeouts in one game.
Gibson excelled in the Fall Classic. He won 7 consecutive World Series games and pitched 8 straight complete games. So who would he pick as his all-century starter?
It would be me. I picked myself first.
On the day he pitches, you worry, number one, will this guy no-hit us?
pitchers now, if they don't have their good stuff, it's like, oh gosh, it's going to be a long day. But a guy like Clemens, he can go out there with mediocre stuff, and because of his competitiveness, battle you right to the end.
Physically, I'm going to try and beat you. If that fails, my mental part of the game takes over. And if that is all falling apart and that's not happening, my emotions come into play. And I've been emotional times on the mound. I'm trying to elevate my game.
Clemens has set a major league record for strikeouts in a game. 20.
Here's the 2-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. That's 20 on the night for Roger Clemens, who has tied his own record.
He's one of those guys that you really want to get him because all the intensity in the game, but then you feel so frustrated because you can't.
You better get a good night's sleep facing him. He has an assortment of pitches that he can get you out with, as well as an above-average fastball with movement. And then he had the audacity to come up with a split finger like he needed one.
Clemens has won a record 5 Cy Young Awards, thanks in great part to an overpowering fastball.
There's just a few guys that grab your attention because you hear that pop, pop, pop of that fastball in the glove.
And he's out on strikes reaching. That's 3,000 for Roger Clemens, who strikes out the side. Roger Clemens becomes the 11th Major League pitcher to hit the 3,000 mark.
They called him the Big Train, Walter Johnson, and he was unquestionably one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Maybe the best.
If you've had the privilege of seeing old clips of Johnson throwing, it's amazing that he could pitch over 90 miles an hour with that easy sidearm motion. But because it was so easy and so deceptive, batters at the time said that all they could do was hear the ball as it whistled past their bats. It just kind of exploded.
That arm just kind of swung around. It was so effortless, and yet that ball came off like it was off the end of a slingshot. It must have been inspiring.
This amazing achievement will probably never be approached. Johnson has more shutouts than the top 3 active shutout leaders combined.
Walter Johnson, as far as I'm concerned, was the greatest pitcher in baseball history. He was very difficult, tough for right-hand hitters and also even left-hand hitters. He, no doubt, was the fastest pitcher in history, as far as I know.
I imagine if he had one of these guns today to check him out, I'd say he must be over 100, easy.
Walter Johnson won 416 games for the Washington Senators. Washington was once described as first in war, first in peace, and last in the American League.
He pitched for a team that most years was not very good. The Washington Senators, of course, were the epitome of futility for many years. And yet he would win 25, 30 games in many seasons. And at that time, his speed was considered to be overpowering, overwhelming.
Lawrence Spahn was pretty special. A stylish left-hander. If anybody ever fit that description, it was Spahny. Not only with the array of pitches that he threw, but he had a classic wind-up and a great pickoff move.
Spahn was by himself, He won 363 games, and he won 20 games, 13 years. That's almost unheard of.
Though he didn't get his first win till age 25, Spahn pitched for more than 2 decades, and with each passing year, his resolve grew.
When I got to be an advanced age, my ball club was thinking in terms of replacing me with a younger left-hander, so that I felt that any left-handed pitcher that took my job was going to have to be better than me. So it kind of spurred me on. Baseball was so good to me that I had the opportunity to play in the big leagues for 21 years. I had the opportunity to play in 3 World Series. We finally got to be the champions over the Yankees, which I consider the greatest feat whenever we beat the Yankees. First of all, I wanted to be a better hitter than the pinch hitter that came off the bench.
I had the distinction of 1 game pinch hitting for him and I had the distinction of having him pinch hit for me one game.
It takes a lot of hard work to pitch a shutout when you're pitching, but one swing of the bat and hey, you're a hero for the minute. I'm proud of my accomplishments. I think they were hard-earned. I wouldn't want to play in any other era than the one I did. We had fun playing, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Christy Mathewson was the first great superstar of the 20th century. He was not only a great pitcher, but because he had gone to college, he had been an All-America football player at Bucknell, because he was tall and good-looking and blonde in an age in which photographs were becoming increasingly important in American society, Mathewson made the game respectable. Mathewson, if not invented, certainly was the first man to perfect what he called the fadeaway. We'd call it the screwball now, where the ball could break away from left-handed hitters. And this was another element of the fascination people had with him. They wanted to see that strange new pitch that he used so effectively. You look at Mathewson's numbers. You look at the 373 wins, a phenomenal total. You look at the complete games. He completed, I think, over 80% of every game that he started. His great control. He threw 390 innings in a season and walked, I think, only 42 men. His performances in the World Series. He started 11 World Series games. He finished 10 of them. His ERA in the World Series was 1.15.
Mathewson had 3 shutouts in the 1905 World Series. It's probably the greatest World Series performance of all time. Almost won the series single-handedly.
So Christy Mathewson was somebody everybody looked up to and somebody who delivered on his expectations almost every time he took them out.
Lefty Grove could throw hard. He had a good fastball. We pitched against each other, and I lost to him 1-0. It was an honor. I enjoyed it, every bit of it.
Lefty Grove was the most revered and dominant pitcher of the 20s and 30s for both the Philadelphia A's and the Boston Red Sox.
When Lefty pitched, when he came to the park, and somebody would say, "What day is it today?" You'd say, "Win day," because Lefty's pitching. He just had that will and that aura that everybody on the club felt. If you were around him as a teammate, you really had an appreciation for the mental approach to the game.
Lefty Grove won 9 ERA titles in an era which was very heavy on offense, where entire teams batted 300 in the 1930s.
Lefty Grove won exactly 300 games in his major league career. But what people forget is that Lefty Grove didn't come to the majors till he was 25 years old. He was such a good pitcher for the minor league Baltimore Orioles that Jack Dunn, the owner, refused to sell him until he got the top price. He was winning 25 games a year in the minor leagues for several years. If you add those wins to his major league wins, he's up there in the high 300s.
Important indicators for pitchers are winning percentage and earned run average. And Lefty Grove holds all of the records in those categories. And I think you can make a case, and a very strong one, that Lefty Grove could be considered the greatest pitcher of the century.
From pitchers to catchers, as the all-century team continues.
If you have to pick at every position one great one, Bench is the greatest catcher that ever lived and ever will live.
For Johnny Bench, greatness was evident in his very first season. All-Star selection, Rookie of the Year. 2 MVP awards would follow, along with a reputation for all-round brilliance.
He was just so smart. I mean, he could sit on the bench with me, and he said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "No, I didn't see that." He could pick things out from a pitcher, I mean, just like that.
No, sit over here with Jonathan. Sit over here, Jonathan. He's smart.
Smart enough to revolutionize the way his position was played by keeping his right hand safely behind his back.
He had big, strong hands. I mean, he could use his catcher's glove like you use a first baseman's glove, and no other catcher could do that.
Well, I learned to do things and how to sweep tag and do things that nobody else had been able to do because they'd always been two-handed catchers, and they'd take that brown glove and they'd stick it down there. And I learned to catch the way Johnny Bench could catch.
I thought Johnny had the best arm of any catcher that I've seen because of the way he threw the ball, and I think it came across his ear, across his right ear, very truly.
Here we go. Bench's throw right on the money. Look at that kid throw.
As great as Bench was behind the plate, he also had more than 2,000 hits, almost 400 home runs, and a knack for coming through in the clutch.
Calling the game, it's very demanding physically, and then he would come up in the ninth inning and just happen to hit that home run to beat you.
And a pitch to Bench. Change hit in the air to deep right field. That goes to Mindy. And the thing, he's done.
In a century of catchers, one man stands alone.
Nobody reminds me of Johnny Bench, and I say it with all the credibility and honesty in the world that nobody had a transfer from the glove to the throwing position as quickly as Bench had. He sucked up balls in the dirt. He was a power hitter. He was a leader. He was the best. He was the best ever.
Lawrence Peter Berra, known to everyone as Yogi.
For 18 years, Yogi Berra was the anchor of the New York Yankees. Though he certainly didn't look the part.
Yogi, first of all, if you looked at him, you'd say, well, he's not a ball player. Well, he's only a Hall of Famer.
Yogi inspired fear in opposing pitchers because he hit almost anything.
He was a great bad ball hitter. You used to see him take balls right out of the catcher's glove.
A high drive. That's trouble. And Yogi Berra belts one, and the ball game is even.
Yogi I feared because Yogi was a bad ball hitter. You couldn't throw it too high and you couldn't throw it too low.
I saw the ball good. That's the only reason. A lot of people ask me, how come you hit so many bats? To me, they look good when I hit them. I played 17 years with them. I was in 14 of them. And we won 10 World Series, and I was just born at the right time.
And the Yankees are champions. And look at Berra. Piggyback riding Bob Cazala. The Yankees for the fourth consecutive time.
The word that comes to mind about him is impact. He had a great impact on the game, on people who saw him, on his team winning the World Series, on everything he did. He had more impact than most other players do, and certainly out of proportion to the numbers he left in the book.
Now the best to ever play the outfield, beginning with the Bambino.
Every time you mention baseball, it's Babe Ruth. I mean, he captured the imagination of baseball fans, of non-baseball fans throughout the world.
From the time he joined the Yankees, he started hitting those home runs, and the fans really loved the Babe.
He was the most tremendous player this game ever had.
When he came out on the field, everybody stopped. It was like the star came onto the center stage.
Yankees in town this day, taking batting practice. I heard the crack of that bat, and I'd never heard that sound before. I wanted to see who was hitting. Here was a barrel-chest guy with skinny legs with the prettiest swing I'd ever seen, and that was Babe Ruth hitting that ball.
Babe Ruth ushered in a whole new era when he introduced power on a grand scale to the grand old game.
People had never seen a ball hit so hard, never seen a ball hit so far, and he did it with such tremendous flair.
You want to ask anybody in baseball, or ask any kid, you just say home run, everybody said Babe Ruth.
Twice in Ruth's career, he hit more home runs than any team in the league. I think that's the most benumbing statistic in any sport.
He became the biggest name in all of baseball. No, better make that any sport.
I think Babe Ruth's the most famous athlete of the 20th century, and certainly the most famous player of all time.
I just hope that fathers will keep on telling their sons, once upon a time, there was a baseball player named Babe Ruth, and he was a great baseball player and a great guy.
In American mind, Babe's still the king, but in the minds of us that play baseball, Hank is the king. You know, he'll always be the king.
Hank Aaron. What a hitter he was.
One of the top 3 elite that these two eyes have ever seen.
I think the best hitter maybe right now is Henry Aaron right now in baseball.
He's mostly a risk hitter. He hits at the last second, and when you think the ball is past him, he will hit the ball quick.
Well, the catcher's glove.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, he'll hit it hard.
I don't say he was the best home run hitter. I say he was the best hitter.
He could size up a situation within like 2 or 3 pitches. And the one thing I noticed about Henry is that when he was on the on-deck circle, he was always focused on what the pitcher was doing. And I'm sure he was doing that in the dugout. So by the time he came to the plate, he knew what sequences you were going to use.
He's sitting on 7-14. Here's the pitch by Downing. Swinging. There's a drive into left center field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's 7-15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
When you think of Hank Aaron, I think most people think of home runs. But if you get a chance, look at his numbers. Just look at his numbers and compare them to anybody else out there.
Think about how many hits he has. 3,700 and some odd hits, right? You take away the 755 home runs he hit, and he's still got 3,000 hits.
Lost sometimes in his home run heroics is the fact that Hank Aaron could do it all.
The thing that people should know about Henry is how good a player he was, how good an all-around player he was. That's one of the most overlooked aspects of his career.
I don't think everybody realizes how well he could play the outfield, how he could steal a base when you needed to have a base stolen, how he could get a base hit when it just required a base hit and a home run wasn't the thing. And I think that he was a better all-around player than people realize.
And the thing about him is he's smart. See, I don't think people understand how smart Hank was. I mean, he knew all the time what was coming. He knew the umpires. He knew the catchers.
I studied the game. You know, I could tell you at the end of the season, if I hit 40 home runs, who I hit those 40 home runs off of, what the situation it was. Baseball was a 24-hour job to me.
And that dedication was something those he played with and against couldn't help but see.
One of the things that made Hank such a special player would be some of the attributes that make him such an exemplary human being. Character, not the vociferous type leader, but yet leader by example. And that's how he demanded his respect.
Often, a lot of people ask me who was the greatest player I ever seen, and I don't hesitate to say Willie Mays.
He's the guy that everybody used to go to the field, to the game, to watch him run in the bases, to watch him make that basket catch, watch him hit the ball over the fence. I think Mays did so much for baseball.
There was only one player I think that the whole world wanted to be like, and that was Willie, because Willie did everything.
Willie beat you in all the ways you could be beaten.
There's only 5 things you can do to be great, and that's hit with power, run, field, and throw. Mays could do it all.
His first hit off me landed in the left center field bleachers, and I think it knocked 2 chairs out up there.
And they said, if you hit it in the ballpark, he's going to catch it, and he would.
There's a long drive, way back in center field, way back, it is.
I was a guy, when I first came up, I believed that I could catch any ball that stayed in the ballpark. I guess I was kind of cocky kid, knowing that if the ball went up, I could catch it.
Willie Mays was just spectacular. Tremendous power, tremendous arm, an exciting player.
He's the guy you see when you envision baseball, you close your eyes, you see Willie Mays.
Baseball's a fun game, and Willie played it like he was a young boy and having fun, and that's why he was such a good ball player.
I like to be remembered as a guy that loved what he was doing, and I loved playing baseball.
Just putting on the Yankee uniform, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I was proud.
I seen DiMaggio for 5 years. He never did anything wrong. He was a perfect ball player.
He had a lot of grace. Never dove for a ball. He never got his uniform full of grass, and never put on the act like some other center fielders would.
You'd think he had a base hit, and he would lope over there just as smooth and bring it in. He was the smoothest center fielder I ever saw, or outfielder I ever saw.
The fact that DiMaggio as a hitter was able to hit so many home runs while playing his home games at Yankee Stadium is a tribute to his all-around skill.
Had he played in any other ballpark but Yankee Stadium, he'd have probably hit as many home runs as Hank Aaron had.
That is the most remarkable and heroic feat because it has something of the everyday as well as the Superman. Here's a guy who shows up for work every day and does what he's asked to do. He's supposed to get a hit, and he does it.
The head is absolutely still, the hand's the bat, and then when the right moment comes, boom.
Joe DiMaggio was the complete ball player. He played hard every day. For him, it was the only way.
He could throw, he could run, he could hit with power, and made it look easy.
Played over 10 years with him, and I never saw him make a mental error. Everything he did was Mr. Perfection.
They throw in where I'm swinging, and I'll be swinging, might mean the old ball game.
Ted Williams just might be the greatest hitter who ever lived.
If I give myself one bit of credit, it was that I thought about what I had to do as much as any hitter.
His own business. I used to talk to him, but he never had. He'd tell me to shut up, you know, and all that. And I used to tease him. I said, well, if you don't talk to me, I will never talk to you again, you know. He was a good hitter, my gosh.
He studied baseball, he studied hitting, and he knew it from here to there, A to Z. You could hardly ever fool him.
I was worried about just hitting the ball hard. And I knew if I hit the ball hard, I had a hell of a chance.
Ted Williams lost 5 years to World War II in Korea. Had he not lost those 5 years, and adding about 35 home runs per year to his total, he has in the 690s instead of his 521 that he currently has.
If somebody comes up to you and says, the greatest hitter was somebody other than Babe Ruth or Ted Williams. You can just walk in the other direction because that man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All the opposing players would come out of the locker room just to watch him hit. I mean, that's how good he was. He just had a swing that he just perfected. He could hit for power, hit for average.
Or you couldn't try to sneak a fastball by Ted, even though you're throwing over 100 miles an hour. It was like trying to sneak a sunbeam by a rooster. You can't do it. It couldn't be done.
There was something special about Ted Williams, and to me, he was the most outstanding hitter that I ever saw.
He wore the Red Sox uniform for 22 years. He was the last man to hit 400 in a season. The greatest hitter that ever lived. Number 9, Hall of Famer, baseball legend, Ted Williams.
The magnificent Yankee, the great number 7, Mickey Mantle.
Mickey Mantle was a 3-time Most Valuable Player. During his 18-year tenure with the Yankees, they won 12 American League pennants and 7 World Series.
Mickey Mantle had more physical ability than any player I ever saw. I think Mickey made the comment that if he'd known they were going to make such a big deal out of the 40-40 thing, he would have done that, and he certainly could have. He had the speed to do it.
Mickey used that speed to his advantage in the outfield. Still, his legend can be best traced back to what he did from both sides of the plate.
Get par. He could hit the ball, boy. Pretty good both ways, left and right.
He had that swing. His swing was grooved. I don't think anybody was as powerful as Mantle.
I hit long home runs. When I hit the ball good, it was a home run. My longest balls were left center, right center, and dead center.
Mantle hits a high fly ball. It's deep left center field. It's way out there. It's way out there, and it is in there. I mean it's in there.
And there was no greater stage for Mantle's power than the World Series.
If you made a mistake, the ballparks were too small. But he could be pitched to. If you kept it close to his fist left-handed, now you missed that spot by 3 inches. Bye-bye, baby.
There's a fly ball out to right field. That ball is going, it is gone.
Who knows what Mantle might have achieved had his legs withstood the test of time.
I've always said that Willie Mays is the greatest player I've ever watched, with one exception. If Mantle would have had 2 good legs, I might have been saying that about him.
In order to win in the big leagues, you've really got to be a strong competitor. If you're not a strong competitor, you're gone.
There was no more fierce competitor in baseball, or maybe anywhere on the planet, than Tyrus Raymond Cobb.
Ty Cobb was a player that did everything hard. As soon as he got his uniform on, he was a different man.
He always maintained that, once you get out there on the field, you can't be weak and submissive and let the other guy beat you up.
Paranoia, fierceness, outright fear drove Cobb to perform.
A very driven individual, one of these people that you see once or twice in a generation, a ball player that gets the max out of his potential, out of his body, and just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing.
Nowhere was that more evident than when Cobb was on the bases.
He was somewhat ruthless on the base paths.
When he'd slide into a base, he'd try to hit the second baseman. He'd try to run right into him with his legs. If he could knock the man down, that's what he'd do.
He really baffled the baseman, I think. They didn't know exactly what he was going to do.
Just took everything. Just took bases, took every advantage that there was to take on the field. Just a very dominant player.
Today you see a graphic that says, this player has batted .350 over his last 5 games. Ty Cobb batted .366 over a 20-year plus career.
To win the batting crown 9 years in a row, as Cobb did, is probably one of the most difficult and, in today's world, underappreciated feats.
He would hit with his hands separated rather widely on the bat. Anyone who thinks that this style wouldn't work today is nuts, because That stance enabled him to make a last-minute adjustment at the plate.
He was generally considered, by those who saw him play at the time, to be the greatest baseball player of that era, including Ruth.
What made Pete Rose so tough was this. If you hurt him, and he's laying down there, and he isn't breathing, right? And the coroner says, he's dead. That's a bad thing that coroner just said. Unless you absolutely have killed him, you will never stop him from coming after you.
The road to the World Series went through the Reds. The team's personality came from Pete Rose. There's just something about Pete, and you look at him going, he's going to be a damn tough guy to beat.
You couldn't ask for a better leadoff hitter. You couldn't ask for a guy that could go first to third. You couldn't ask for a guy with better enthusiasm. You couldn't ask for a better leader on a ball club. Pete Rose personified what baseball meant. He really loved to win as much as anybody I've ever known.
Pete was very special. I mean, this guy, I can remember when he'd get base hits up the middle, singles, diving into second. Or a walk, he ran hard to first. And I'd hear players on my own bench, Charlie Hustle, Knife Fanny, things like that. And you know what I'm thinking to myself? Everybody should play like that.
Pete was so consistent, it was unbelievable. I mean, each year, 200 hits, 200 hits, 200 hits.
Because of his durability, because he knew he was going to play almost every game, knew he was going to make contact probably 4 times a game, he actually thought he could break the record.
2-1 pitch from Schaum. Center. There it is. Rose has eclipsed Cobb. That's number 4,192.
As far as I was concerned, I was most happiest when I put on the uniform and played baseball.
And for 22 seasons, Stan the Man played it as well as anyone. He was known for his ever-present smile and for one of the sweetest swings in the game.
The rookies who came to spring training, they would ask me, I was always smiling all the time and enjoying myself. And I used to tell these rookies, I said, it's a great feeling when you know you're going to hit 340, 350 before the season starts.
I know in '46, one of the great scouting days, the Red Sox had clinched the pennant early, and they came out to watch us against the Boston Braves, and Stan went 5 for 5. He went down the left field line, the right field line, hit one in left center, one in right center, home run, and then he hit one up the middle. I'd love to see how they scouted him. Some kind of a football defense to stop him that day.
We have a record, Henry Aaron, I, and Willie Mays. We're the only fellas that have over 6,000 total bases.
Coaches in baseball said he would never hit with that stance he had because it was so unique and so different.
I first came to this stance when I came to the big leagues. I wanted to guard the plate and the strike zone, so I crouched over somewhat.
He was able to take like a stutter step and still be able to keep the bat back when the pitch was an off-speed pitch and still catch up with the fastball.
Here's the pitch. Line drive, there it is! Into left field! Hit number 3,000! Musial ran first! On his way to second with a double!
Of around 14,000 players who played Major League Baseball in this century, only 4 of them rank among the top 20 in each of the Triple Crown categories. Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, and Lou Gehrig might be easily guessed. The 4th is Stan Musial.
just want to be the best player that I can be, not what they think I should be or who I can be. I just want to be Ken Griffey Jr.
You don't want to take this guy for granted. That's how good he is. I see him crash against the walls, hit 500-foot home runs over and over again every night.
I've never seen a player that makes things look so easy at times. Just simple.
He had it all the way!
Makes it look easy.
He just kind of like floats and just glides through the ball and just have a very fluid swing. And just like, oh my God, this guy's sick. He makes me sick.
Yeah, I think Ken Griffey is so talented that there isn't anything that he was challenged to do that he couldn't do.
Griffey hits it a mile.
I've always said that if it's anybody that's capable of breaking the record, my record, it would be him because of his consistency and he's young enough to do it.
Best verification of whether Ken Griffey Jr. can hit more than 755 home runs or not comes from Hank Aaron. If Hank Aaron thinks he can, then obviously who are we to quibble?
Griffey going back over his shoulder, makes the catch.
If you're a good hitter, you'll stay around 4 or 5 years because you can hit. But guys who make careers out of this are the guys who go out there and play defense.
Leaps high in the air, and he's got it!
He'll do something, and you just kind of look at it, and your mouth will drop open, and you're almost in disbelief.
Amazing catch by Junior!
If it's hit and Junior can't catch it, well, it can't be caught.
He's willing to sacrifice his body for a catch. To me, that shows that he is more concerned about winning and the team than he is about Ken Griffey Jr.
Not only do you have a player who's exciting to watch at bat, is a thrill to watch run the bases, and is probably more thrilling than any of that to watch play center field. Griffey might become the first player to make 2 all-century teams, the 20th century and the 21st century.